Today, we're going to be continuing our conversation about information management and knowledge building, and then we're going to go into the results from your IMKB survey, which we did last week, and then the day in the life survey as well. The whole general theme here is to continue or apply our discussions about information management, knowledge, beliefs, into how we actually demonstrate them in our learning via major versus non-major classes. And then afterwards, we'll analyze just our general routine, how we operationalize, conduct ourselves in our day-to-day. And that's going to lead into our discussion on Thursday, where we introduce ideas of expertise, and we add a little disruptor in here, and we compare a little bit between how humans learn initially and how machines learn. We're going to have some exposure to what we do versus what AI does to serve as a contrast and a foil. I have one other thing to say, then I'll answer questions. The readings this week, you should have done the reading for today. If not, that's fine. But the second reading, the Siemens article, at the beginning of the summer, at the beginning of the semester, I was very optimistic. I reread it last night, and I think the middle section's probably too technical. So the first section and the fourth section, so it's like pages 1 to 2, then pages 6 to 8 for that second article, so it should only be 4 pages. We're going to do that instead, and then all of that more complex information will be discussed in class in a very synthesized and easy to understand way. So if you've already read the entirety of that article, congratulations, you are incredibly educated. I'm also sorry that I didn't update that earlier. If you have complaints about that, maybe, we can do something about that. But any questions in the interim? Yes, Elizabeth.
The syllabus says Thursday is asynchronous. Is that true?
Is that what it says?
Yeah, I think so. Am I looking at the wrong thing?
Let's look at it together. If that's what I have said in the syllabus, to my chagrin, I will honor that. But let me check here. Does anybody else have to deal with this insanity?
It asks you if you share the device, but it doesn't actually save it. Like, what's the point of that? Every time it's like, is this your device? Yes. So then why are you calling me every time I use it?
Yeah, that's I have that same issue with my bank account and with my brokerage account and with my email account. It doesn't get better, but let's see. It says it's asynchronous. Oh, it does. Okay. I don't know why that's there. This is like one of the most exciting classes for me. I don't know why I put that there. Well, so what we'll do is I will record. I'm going to be here on Thursday. If you want to be here or if you are here, you can come. Otherwise, I will post it online. I'm not going to pre-record it in advance. Asynchronous means that normally that I would pre-post it in advance. Is everybody fine with that? Just posting it after class if you don't want to come in class? Yeah?
Then how are you going to do the summary check?
Summary check, you can email me the, everybody has my email. It's on the syllabus. You just email me a photo of it.
If we come in class, I can just look at it right here.
Yeah. No, I will have you take a photo. I will look at it, then I will submit it, and then Kafkaesque nightmare. Yeah.
Are meetings always due on Thursdays or Tuesdays?
Thursdays. It's just administratively really annoying to have to check every day, and I really don't want to do that. So yeah, yes, I will honor this. No excuse, like you don't need an excuse to leave or not be here tomorrow, but please watch the lecture. As you can see here, the lectures are updated in, got a nice little YouTube link. This one has How many views? Can you guys guess how popular I am on YouTube? 4 views? I think that's really optimistic. I think it's like 1. And I think that's me watching it with my girlfriend yesterday. 2, look at that. Okay. Oh, I guess I am the second, so yeah. These are awesome. They're shorter than what they normally are. That's not my video. Go check it out. I put some memes in there. Try to keep you stimulated. I know that is a difficult proposition at times, but okay. All right. Administrative stuff, I think we've settled. Any other questions? Any other points of concern? My apologies for that, or some people will be very happy, I am assured. But okay, today, like I said, we're going to start off with IMKB. We're going to do a lot of data analysis. That's basically going to be the function of the class. There's going to be a lot of discussion. I'm going to show you a number of graphs and charts from your responses. You get to see your data, your individual data you have, your class data, and then also comparing within the data within your groups. Joshua, I think we might, if you could join over there or that table. Yeah, maybe go to that table, just so we have some discussion. Sorry about that. And yeah, so let's just get into it. There's no need to think anymore. So this is your class data. I'm going to give you something like this. I want you to look at it for a minute or two. Then I want you to discuss with your group the information on the screen. And then from there, we're going to open it up to discussion. We're going to go through that cycle very quickly. View, analyze, think, discuss, broader discussion. This is pretty standard in every class that I've been here. I don't know if it's because we are in the College of Education or human development tends to skew more female than male, but this is pretty standard, nothing abnormal here. This also kind of aligns with the data that we've seen about educational attainment for females and males, right? We saw that last week, do we remember? The CDC, women tend to earn more degrees than men. Remember that? That's fairly consistent. This is also fairly consistent. We normally don't have freshmen, so if you're here, congratulations, yes, hello, thank you. And then sophomore, that's spelled right, junior, okay. Nothing crazy here. Respondents by major group. We had to consolidate a number of majors, or else we'd just have like 16 different majors, which would make this not very usable. Computer science is obviously computer science. Architecture and real estate is a combination of both majors. STEM, if you didn't like fall into human development, health science, art, whatever, you did not have a large enough group to, like if you're bio-sci, you are in this group. Multidiscipline is similar. I think criminology is in multidiscipline, social plus other sort of sciences associated here, and then health science, arts, psychology, etc. We're going to just go through these quickly before we get to things that are more interesting. This is where we'd like to start doing our analysis and our discussions as a class. These are your average IMKB scores, major versus non-major, for the entire population. Does someone want to remind us what IM stands for?
Information management.
And what does that look like?
Short term.
Short term. Somebody give me a real example. What do you do every day that might be information management? Okay, you don't need it afterwards, right? Unless you're Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton, this is my fun fact for the day, he would write down people's names and fun facts about them having gone to events, and he would go home with Hillary afterwards and memorize them, and then, I know, it's wild behavior, and then a year later or whatever, he talked to somebody and asked them how their daughter was doing, whether they'd graduated a certain college or whatever, and that was a unique building block in Bill Clinton's interpersonal strategies, right? He also had this like very nice charisma that people talked about. But again, we're not going to get into, we're in DC. I figured maybe people would be more into political analogies and stuff like that. But again, IM information management. You get information in, you retain it, you use it, and then you kind of let it go. You don't need it. Knowledge building. It's kind of the opposite. What does that look like? I think the definition is kind of in the name. Marvin, what does it look like?
Longer.
Long term, okay. So if you are Bill Clinton then, memorizing names, instead of information managing, small talk information that most people do, you're going to integrate it into some knowledge store, trying to relate that information to other information you know. That's called a mnemonic device. Have we heard of this before? Some of us, would one of us like to explain what a mnemonic device is? Yes.
Like forming a word out of the first letters of, for example, like concept. So like smart goals is one example. Specific,
Right.
measurable, stuff like that.
Right. So the idea is you have a schema in your mind, you have a structure, and you're relating bits of information into like a larger narrative. So one of them would be, if you have an acronym, describing the different elements of that acronym. There's a backbone that you build off of. Another mnemonic device might be a strategy that the Greeks employed, which was they would tell stories. And at each step, each beat in the story, there'd be some set of associated information. So if you're recounting the Iliad or something, you get to one spot, you have some feature, some word that you get to that then hopefully is associated with other information, so it's easier to access. You're kind of like playing games with your mind to access information. So take a minute. Let's analyze our IMKB scores for major and non-major, as well as our scores by gender. And I would like for you all to sort of lead these discussions and pose questions to each other in your immediate group, and then also to the class as a whole. I think we have enough brain power here to have some interesting analysis and discussion about the data that we have here. Any questions? No? Okay, let's get to it. And I'll be walking around. Okay, I don't think there's too much information here. So what are our basic observations from this data so far? Yes.
People remember a lot more and put more focus into learning and knowledge building for their major as compared to maybe a non-major class. They're putting more focus into the major class.
Direct my attention. Where should I be looking in the graph to make that conclusion? Okay, left. Now what?
Right there.
Right here? Just,
Yep.
Okay, and this is telling me what? Down here. So the score 55, we're just comparing major IM versus major, non-major IM, or we're comparing, okay.
Or well, the knowledge building.
So major IM to knowledge building. Okay. And so the claim is because we see higher scores here, there's a clear disparity, right, between. And so what do we think the underlying theory is here? We just care? Is that it more?
Yeah, that we put more effort into actually building the knowledge for the class instead of just retaining it for the semester.
Right. Do we concur? Yes? Nays?
I also kind of like, I'm like thinking back to the question, and
Right. So the way that the measure is created is that this one in particular, you create a bunch of questions and you try to map it onto a construct. So it might be more effort displayed in a class or just effort displayed in general, higher self-reports of motivation, higher self-efficacy, or higher scores related to class or whatever. And then you take that information, then you try to construct questions that map onto that, and that's where the questions are from. So within like a large population that it's tested on, those questions have the sort of highest correlation between what you would classically consider information management versus knowledge building. Does that make sense? That's a good question. That's something that we should be looking at with every sort of survey. Now, it could also be the case that people are outliers or that your habits don't particularly match well to the correlation that you see with other people.
I feel like, at least from my scores, I feel like they gave me a little bit too much credit in terms of my IM score was like really low compared to, I guess, seeing the averages. And I feel like, I feel like I'm maybe not necessarily that good. Like, I like to think I'm knowledge building, but like, I'm sure I do a lot of information management as well. So I feel like it was something with the questions that gave me almost an artificial score. 'Cause I don't know. That was just me personally, like looking at my scores.
Right. I think this might highlight a larger issue with self-report data, which is, and I don't know if I'm going to go in the direction that you think you're going, but knowing you for 2 weeks, I would say the information that you display, the sort of questions that you have, I think that would just anecdotally, I think that's probably higher than most people. And I think an issue with self-report is comparing yourself to the broad population, right? When you think about it, if you are an outlier within a particular group, the question is, where does that group sit, right? So if there is some disparity between you and the group in university generally, what is then your disparity between not just that group, but then the larger group as well? So unless you have experience with the hundreds or thousands of people that were randomly sampled to then establish these correlations, it would be very hard to say that your responses, that the ranking that you got is invalid. Does that make sense? It would be, like, I think that's an empirical question, right? And I don't think we have the information to really delineate that. But yeah, just to keep pressing forward here, we do see a major difference in knowledge building versus IMKB scores. It seems to flatten out for non-major. Does anybody have an idea as to why that may be? Yes?
Because we don't put as much effort into like our non-major classes, so like we don't care about information building or information management or knowledge building. Like it kind of just evens out because we aren't putting that much effort like at all into it.
Right, and I think generally it's like, at least it's not 20, right? We're still actively engaged, even if it's just management of information and knowledge building, but this disparity here and this relative synchronicity, I think is very telling of the sort of either the intentionality that people come into class with or just the general interest. And I think some of the trends here in the scores by gender shouldn't be too surprising when they kind of map onto the CDC data, which I wish we had that data here right now. But we can see that females outperform males in major knowledge building as well as non-major knowledge building, and very much the same for information management at the same time. Anybody have any theories as to why that may be? We discussed a little bit about the gender disparity in educational attainment, but this is your this is your group, this is your population, these are your peers. It doesn't have to be this way. Does anybody have any set of ideas or factors that might be of interest? This is this finding, it seems really banal, right? It's just within our class. Like this is us. But if you think about employers trying to figure out who to employ, if they have to place a bet on a new employee, political parties trying to recruit people, whether people are happy or sad about this, whether we think that the knowledge building scores for females is standard and maybe men are underperforming, or we think that the standard is what the males are doing and females are overperforming. What's our hypothesis? This is us. What's our hypothesis?
I mean, if you want to get psychoanalyzing, I mean, like, I guess going into the wage gap, if there already is a wage gap between how much women are being paid versus men are being paid, there might be an implicit pressure to for women to work harder to compensate for those differences in perceptions socially.
Anyone else want to put a stake in the ground? Field an opinion? Field a theory? I think that's a good point. Social factors. The data is going to be here on the slides. IMKB is a big part of this class, and the midterms and the finals are going to talk about this. And they're going to ask you questions about what you think about the data, what your peers think about the data, what the scientific literature says about it, and information that you could bring from your personal or professional or academic experiences. So we can continue, but I think it is imperative for us to sort of dive a little deeper. And so let's start by looking at the class standings here. Let's go through the same process, look at it for a few minutes, or maybe a minute or two, and then discuss with our peers at our table. This is average IMKB scores by class standing.
That was like just necessities, and then interviewing with professors on campus and stuff.
Okay, who wants to, there's a lot of data here. Who wants to start off with the first interesting finding here? We'll wait, yeah. Anybody else? I heard a lot of good discussion. Yes, Khadijah. Can you speak up a little louder? Sorry.
I could try. We thought it was interesting how like freshmen start off like really strong, and then they peak their sophomore year, but then it declines as they like become like juniors and seniors. And I kind of like disagreed with that, just from like my own personal experiences. But yeah, that's what we like talked about.
When you say disagree, what do you mean?
Like I feel like sophomore year like isn't the best year.
So your personal experience doesn't match the data from the class, is what you're saying, right? So you're saying you disagree, it's just that differs from your personal experience. You're not arguing with the data per se.
Yeah, I'm not arguing.
Okay. Okay, we have, what was our percentage of freshmen? We've got 36, over a third are freshmen and sophomores. Is somebody from the lower classes here? In terms of sequence. Like to explain why? The claim was, or the data represents high knowledge building for majors and high knowledge building for non-major scores, right? Bridging 80, around 70, and then we see a drop, maybe around 76, 77, slightly lower, and we see a noticeable drop in non-major KB scores as well.
I mean, so when I'm looking, I'm one of the, I think it was like, what, three freshmen?
Three freshmen, yeah.
So like when I'm looking at the freshman scores, they like literally look like a 50-50 mix between my personal scores and the average. So like I wonder how much like one person or two people or whatever are skewing that, because I think that's
Right.
part of it. For me personally, my like major and non-major scores were almost identical, because I like my major classes, but also I've been picking non-major like gen ed classes that I find like fun. So I'm just as invested in those as I am in my major classes. So that was how it was for me versus like with the average where the non-major classes and maybe people are just looking at gen eds, but yeah, that's where I was coming from.
So I guess the claim that's being made here is in this anecdote, this personal experience, you're saying I have classes that I enjoy as a freshman. Maybe there is an exuberance about being in university for the first time. Well, let's paint the picture and then we can push back collectively or not. There's some reason here, we're trying to figure out why this trend in the data exists. And so we have to hypothesize, which means we have to make a claim, and then we have to adjudicate that claim. We have to evaluate it and determine whether we believe it or not. Everybody in this class is represented here. So everybody here should have some idea as to why this trend exists. We had a claim about the N here, the number of people represented in this distribution. It's 3. So through aggregating our personal experience, we might be able to determine whether this is accurate or not.
I want to know who the other people
Yes,
are. What are your scores?
Diana.
I'm also a freshman, and I think my scores for the knowledge building sections were very similar because I've only experienced about like 3 weeks of classes and I'm not really like
That's true.
haven't developed a difference in how I'm like connected to the classes yet. So I think that coming from that's why the scores look the way they do.
Right. Okay, so you would be in the novelty category. Is that how everybody felt as a freshman?
Well, it's like a lot of the questions were
Haley, let's just try to have more.
Just saying how like a lot of my classes are gen eds, so like I don't really feel one way towards my major classes because like I have 2 of them or 1 of them. So.
Interesting. So you almost have to care because of just what you have.
Yeah, like I can't care like so much about major classes. I only have like 2.
Right. Yes.
a lot of the questions were asking about like how to select courses, and I'm like, I've only selected courses once, and it was at orientation with like the counselor, so it's like I'm not like going through all these like I think that's why we were talking earlier about like the questions asking about, so like I feel like some of them just like applied less
Right. So the claim being made here is that there's not a lot of lived experience for this to be valuable. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, especially for a semester where we're
Okay. Because the point here is let's act like this doesn't exist. All right? Like, if we're going to make a claim, all I'm asking for is let's think about how it relates to everything, all of the data here. If this doesn't exist, this data still exists, right? And supposedly these people have a whole year as well. There's also the point that college is not the first time you've selected courses, hopefully, in high school. You've selected courses. Sure. But again, let's just assume this doesn't exist. This still exists. I would still like, before moving on here, we have a lot more data to go through, but I'm imagining people are having theories. I appreciate Cole's theory. No, I appreciate it. I appreciate Cole's theory. He's putting a stake in the ground. Is anybody else willing to make a sort of, also Haley as well, but anybody else, any ideas? Do we just not care as much about things that aren't going to make us money in the future? Yes.
From like personal experience, I'm surprised that all the senior ones are actually so high.
Okay, interesting point. Okay, why? Are you in that category?
Yeah.
Okay.
But
And this is not representative of your data then?
like not really.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm still taking 2 major classes, and then the rest are all gen ed. And then next semester, it's like I'm taking 4 gen ed classes and 1 major class. But like all of them, I'm taking just to fulfill final like requirements. So like
Right.
even like my major classes, they're just like electives that I have to take like in the major.
Right, right. Okay. So the claim here is that, okay, so you're saying your data doesn't map, but is there a claim here about why it plays out the way that it plays out? Yes.
I mean, I feel like for me, when I was like a sophomore, and for like major classes, I was still like taking like the core requirements. So obviously my KB score would be higher. Now, that I'm like just finishing up my last few restricted electives, I pretty much know already what's important in my field and what's not. So I'm more just taking classes that I know will get me a higher GPA. And then for like the sort of similar with the non-major classes, like at first I would take non-major ones that I found were interesting, but then I like quickly realized that my GPA is a little bit more important when it comes to grad school than what I find interesting. So now like this probably sounds bad, but I just go on Planet Terp and like rank by GPA, and I'm like, all right, what's gonna get me the best grade that I don't find totally boring, you know?
Right. Is this a universal experience for our seniors? Yeah? Okay. Let's move on. I appreciate it. IMKB scores major versus non-major by field of study. And we're going to stay on this page. We have a whole nother PowerPoint to get through. We're going to stay on this page until I get 2 theories about some bit of data from the group. Does that make sense? So discuss, look at it, admire your handiwork.
It looks pretty accurate to like what everything should be.
I'm still up there.
Maybe like some scores should be higher.
It's like,
Yeah, I don't really have a hypothesis on it, right?
I think human development
love science.
My major
Or-
I'm surprised you think like both sides go for
Engage in
academics.
psychology,
They don't
engage in
pertain to
major development.
I don't know, a lot of people are not major because
It's like, it's very helpful for us.
So, I mean, the graphs are like necessarily, they just have slightly less audio.
I also like
Especially for human development, it's hard.
Yeah.
That, the data, like,
I think maybe that's why my knowledge of like art major classes.
also like, okay, like, I still do it truthfully, but like,
And the knowledge
to some
building.
extent.
Maybe they wanted to break some slides, just like
Yeah, it was like,
Does every group have a hypothesis? Yeah? Okay, we're going to do something slightly different. In the direction, looking towards efficiency here, we're just going to go through each group. Rapid fire. Draw attention to some data points and then give us your hypothesis. We're going to start with this group. Yes. What is where should we be looking at?
Psychology.
Okay.
Non-major KB. I find
Which
it
is
interesting. Or the purple ones, like the one.
Yeah, okay.
I find it interesting that a non-major they want a knowledge build on. I suppose maybe they want like a break from psych or like a refresher maybe. Yeah.
Okay, so let's compare this. This is a great start. Let's compare this to all the other non-major KB scores. So human development also has a very high non-major KB score. Real estate also has a high comparatively, right? These are the three. You're saying, what was your hypothesis about psychology?
Oh, I think probably wanted a break or a refresher. I don't know.
Okay, who agrees with this hypothesis? And does it explain the modeling here for human development and then also for real estate and architecture? Yes.
I would say that for human development, like the reason why their non-major KB bar is higher might be for different reasons. I was saying that like I think that human development majors are more inclined to knowledge build in their non-major classes because they're able to connect the concepts from human development classes to quite literally anything. I think that like it's easier to connect those things that you learn in HD to like any other field. So a different reason than psychology.
So you're saying if you're learning about the human mind, everything is filtered through the human mind, or if you're learning about how development works, if you're learning about people and economics or sociology, that's still going to apply psychological principles. Yes.
I was just looking at the major KB scores. So I'm looking at like human development, psych, and art or music.
Uh-huh.
I feel like they're very high because like at least the people I know who are in those majors like actually enjoy what they're learning and want to go into the profession because they enjoy doing it. So at least for me, I'm a human development major because I want to be an elementary teacher. So I'm obviously not in it for the money, and I'm like human development. I like the classes that I'm taking, but at least right now, like all my STEM friends like hate what they're learning and they're just pre-med because they want to make money. So they're not very like, I guess they're not very interested in the classes.
They're not motivated. They don't want to. I think these are great points. Yes.
One of the things that we were talking about is with human development and the psychology, like specifically, is the higher rates of the major classes with the knowledge building because these are two fields of study that are you are constantly using them. Any time you have a conversation or any time you engage with someone, you are using skills studied in human development, you're using skills that we talk about in psychology. And so the information, the knowledge building is automatically, I feel like it's going to be higher because you're constantly using these skills.
Right. Okay. All of these points are great, and I think they lead us to the sort of larger aim of this. We have data. I heard points about whether it's actually representative of, the population. We have around, I think, what was the N here? Like 29 people. We normally want at least 35 for social sciences, so it's not too far off. I will tell you that these generally map on fairly well to the previous classes that I've had. But even then, the point of data is to say what is going on in the world. So from here, we're making these claims that maybe there are social factors here. Maybe it's the actual information. Maybe it's the strategies needed for different majors that lead to differences in information management and knowledge building. And what we did, we covered psychology, human development. We even went to art. We made all these claims. But there's one category here that's similar to these that to me seem very different. We had human development. We had psychology, arts and music was discussed, but architecture and real estate almost looks like the spitting image of human development and psychology. I mean, obviously there's a difference here, but at least in relation, yeah, let's ignore non-major KB scores. Can we ask, oh no, I was looking at the wrong one. Yes, it is the spitting image. Are there any architecture, real estate individuals who agree with the hypotheses being discussed about psychology, human development, and arts? Does it apply to you? We're going to start pointing fingers and.
You sorted us by major.
Yeah, you're all in. We got a couple. Okay. The question is, we have made claims about why non-major knowledge building is so high and major knowledge building is so high for psychology, art, and human development. Your general distribution is very similar to these other categories. The claims that were being made were maybe it's the information that's being presented, the way you have to manage it to actually do the job of the major. The other one is you have high interest. The other one is the information in the class. The knowledge that you've learned is easier to apply because in human development and psychology and art, you're thinking about all these principles, whether about the mind or how information is being processed in the mind, and you can find corollaries everywhere. Would you say that that's true for architecture and real estate?
Yeah, I would agree. I think
For which one?
the last one,
Not the first two.
Well, I do agree with the first two overall, but I think the last one stood out to me because in my experience, like the non-gen ed classes, the programs do a good job of offering courses that are very adjacent and have very interdisciplinary knowledge that you can easily apply. And so, like when something stands out in a certain lecture or whatever, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna remember that for my major course that's 2 days later. So, yeah, that's my experience.
So almost similar to psychology. So for instance, if you're in a architecture class and you took an art gen ed, you might say there are principles to design from art that are transposable to architecture.
Yeah.
Or maybe you are in real estate and you take an econ class and you say, oh, global currency fluctuations affect housing market prices or land development prices. That's good to know. It's related, but it's not in my major. So there's things in the world that still impact your major, right?
Yeah, also, I don't think we need that many. I don't know about the other majors, but I think we have a lower threshold to graduating in our major, credit-wise. We don't need that many credits to get a degree.
Oh, interesting.
So I ended up taking a lot of other minors and a lot of other gen ed classes because there's only 90 credits to graduate with a real estate degree, and you need 120 to graduate from school. So there's 30 credits where you're like, okay, I gotta fill this in.
Interesting. So there's structural information. There's structural. There are structures to majors that influence your actual knowledge building and information management outside of just your like and dislike. Yes.
Yeah, I was gonna agree with him. I was gonna say, because I'm a junior and I already took all my core classes, so everything I'm taking now is for my minor or they're just regular electives.
I think that makes sense. I think makes sense. And I think it also maps on to what we've said previously. Okay, so because we're going to go to the next one, I think we've sort of talked about these, but let's talk about these in our groups for the next 5 minutes, and let's write some of these major conclusions down in our journals. Again, remember that we have the data. For a class assignment, what is the sort of conclusion that you can make and defend? Not just criticisms. Obviously, criticisms are great, but criticisms and skepticism needs to feed into a larger project. If you have an issue with the data, it's not representative because we haven't hit our minimum of 30 or 35, whatever the power analysis says we would need. What information can still be drawn from it? What conclusions can we attempt to make? What does the preliminary data support in terms of our hypotheses about how the world works, why people are making their decisions, and not, in terms of information management and knowledge building? And we can have some lively discussion. I think I'll play some music in the background. We've got like 25 minutes left. No, that's not what I want. You could be discussing in your groups if you want, to make sure you're sort of getting similar ideas. But from all the different ideas that were thrown out in class, what are the sort of conclusions we can make? Oh, that's kind of loud. Oh my goodness. What? Oh my God. Okay, we're going to have about 1 more minute to get your thoughts down in your journal before we move on to the Day in the Life survey information. Okay. All right, we're going to transition now. I know today's a lot. There's a lot of data today. Data isn't always the most fun thing to work on, but the ability to, the reason why this is important, day in the life, also information management and knowledge building, data analysis, is that you just sort of like live your life and you don't really know how and why you're making your decisions. You have ideas in your head. We have narratives about why we do, how we do things. But when you actually analyze it and compare it to other people and you establish that comparison, it allows you to make different sorts of analyses that otherwise wouldn't have been possible. And it also allows you to sort of understand the habits and behaviors that you engage with that influences how you perceive the world and learning. And so we're going to skip through the general descriptive data. It's very similar to what we had before. Again, we've had some people come in and out of the class, but the proportions are still the same generally. And same with the respondents, right? This is just basic information. So this is the average class time per category. And this is standardized to be within 100%, so this is not entirely accurate. We have to keep that in mind. This is out of 100. So things are slightly skewed because there's overlap with the multitasking category. This is kind of wild to me. Education and work add up to 22%. Sleep, leisure. Let's see. Let me see if I can do something here. Oh, no, that didn't work. I thought I would be able to just take out the multitasking category. But is this shocking to anybody? Is this interesting to anybody? Okay, yes, Nate?
I think this data will look a lot different midway through the semester.
In what way?
Like specifically for education, like for my experiences, like I'm definitely doing a lot less in terms of what I would normally do throughout the semester because the semester just started. I don't really have that much on my plate right now.
So you're telling me I shouldn't make the reading shorter if you've got all this time?
I have other.
Okay, yeah, as you were saying. So just essentially, we're at the beginning of the semester. It's not representative.
Yeah, and also because it's just one day. Like, again, for me specifically, I do work, but the days that I have like actual work and the days that I have classes look completely different. I didn't want to fill it out twice.
And so you didn't do it right, which is a respectable position. And thank you for doing the day that you did. You did not do an education day?
No, I did.
Like a class day?
I did a class day, but not a work day. So.
Well, it would just add up to the same thing, then, right? Or unless you have the amount of work that you do is disproportional to the amount of education that you have.
Or like work as in like actual like job. Is there a difference?
Yeah. So this is just like coming to class. This is like work in general, right? I guess what I'm saying is, if we group these two together, education and work, then I guess, like if you're doing the same amount of work versus the same amount of class time, maybe you work 5 hours a day.
Yeah.
Maybe you go to class. This is an hour, 15. Maybe you read. Maybe that's another hour. Then maybe you have another class. That's another hour. Is that sort of representative of what you did? So it's kind of the same still, right?
Yeah.
If it's not, it's fine. You can tell me. But I think, right, I think your initial point, like being at a different point in time in the semester, is very important. And we can transition to comparisons between us. This is us. We're fall 2025, in case we forgot. This is last year's data. This is data from 2016. This was sourced around the same time last year, 3 weeks in. This, I don't remember exactly what time of the year. There's no multitasking category? Oh, interesting. No, there isn't a multitasking one.
But I feel like that skews the data not having that category. But I mean, if we're looking at the sleeping category, like if there's overlap in your times, that's gonna make the sleeping like a smaller portion of the pie. Right?
Sure, but
And
let's think about what is the objective here with that point? Is it to say that the data, we should not analyze it, or that we should analyze it more with higher scrutiny?
I think it's just, I would be curious seeing another graph of our fall and last fall's data without the multitasking category, just to see how that looked compared to 2016, just like to have a more one-to-one comparison.
Right. So in the effort of operationalizing that, right, we can look at categories like sleep. So we have like 7.9 hours.
Oh yeah,
And then we can sort of figure out how many hours this is, right? This is not like, that's a very good point. And I'm very happy that we're analyzing the data with scrutiny and reasonable skepticism. But again, in the effort of doing something productive with this, we can still make some pretty significant claims here. Your amount of sleep is higher in comparison to last year, which is still lower than around 10 years ago, right? We can sort of make the same claims here about education. We can figure out the proportions and whatnot. It's a slightly little bit more work, but any other points here that stick out to us generally? Normally people have lots of opinions about this. Yeah.
I think it's even like a generational thing, because if that's the data from 2016, it seems that working was a lot more than
So where's working?
2025. I can't really like.
Right here, 10%.
10%.
10% of 20, that's 2.4 hours.
Yeah.
We did 1.7 hours.
Yeah. And I don't know, just maybe it's like a generational thing, how like 2020, fall 2024 and 25 is kind of similar when it comes to education and work, but there was kind of a jump from that in around 10 years ago, it was 2016.
And work too, we're even lower. So the trend is lower working activities per hour. And then education, we have 14%, which is 1% is 24. 0.24, 0.24, 0.24, 0.24. So what is that? 9.6. And then, so we have like 3.5, 3 hours, 45 minutes for educational activity in 2016. Somebody can do the math and actually get that. That would be helpful. And then educational activities for us, 4.7 hours higher. And then we have 4.6, which is generally the same. So your claim, Taylor, is that this is a generation of people that is completely separate from this. There are social conditions, interpersonal conditions, any other claims about this or reasonable hypotheses as to why there are these differences?
I'm thinking about like how class structure works, because I have literally no clue when this changed, but I was talking to my dad, who's UMD alumni, but he graduated in the 70s, and I was talking about how like the classes are structured now, versus he was saying that when he was in school, like there was no graded attendance, people just came or didn't go, and basically the entire grade was made up of basically like 2 different tests. And I don't know if that was still the case in 2016, or if that change was already occurred by then. But he was surprised to know just how much like college is kind of reminiscent of what he thought of high school these days, in terms of like how it's like, you know, the attendance and the homework. And I mean, I honestly prefer that, because sometimes I have an off day and I'm glad I don't have one test making up my entire grade. But I would assume that you would have to spend less time on educational activities, like at least on an average day, if you just like weren't getting graded on homework and all that stuff. Because some classes do have busy work. Like.
Yeah, let's stop there and let's think about, what was his major? Do you know? Econ. I also took econ in undergrad, And that was exactly my experience. And I was in school in 2016. I was a sophomore. Yes?
I feel like there's more of a difference between 2016 and 2025 because perhaps there was more of a shift in like society towards valuing mental health and like and making sure that like students are doing well mentally and
Sure.
yeah, and I feel like at least like now there's a lot more like initiative, like they're having like mental health week and like a lot more understanding from professors and stuff.
Right.
So I feel like that might be why there would be like maybe more sleep or and leisure and sport and that kind of stuff compared to like before.
Right, right. So again, larger societal changes that are affecting our general daily patterns. Again, accounting for, it's valid to say that my personal data is not being reflected in the outcomes here, and that my personal data would be different if I submitted different days. But the beauty of statistics is that when we randomly sample all of ourselves into a group, some people are going to do the days that they're busiest, some people are going to do the days that they're not busiest. We generally have a representative sample of the population or class, or maybe a few people off from having a generally accurate representation. But the idea that I'm really interested in is not just this societal question, but the question Cole was alluding to about the fundamental change in university. And this goes back to one of our original questions or quotes here about the function of education. I was, like I said, I was up here. I was definitely not sleeping more than 8 hours a day. But I was also in a program, like I've told you before, there was a grading distribution. 10% of people got A's, 30% got B's. My professors would say, read the syllabus. If you can't make it for your midterms, don't email me, drop the course. I don't have time for that. Which, when you have 300 people, it's kind of hard to make accommodations for everybody. But do we think that this is a cultural shift from higher ups, administrative positions, teachers, administrators, or is this a fundamental shift in you? You've read this paper where this comes from. You're looking at this data here. You're looking at how you compare. You can maybe extrapolate a little bit from what happened last year to this year. Do we think it's us? Do we think we're fundamentally different? Us as in you, not me because I'm there. Like this affects you. There's a time in history here where people got 8 or 9 hours of sleep regularly. You should be getting 9 hours of sleep given your age. I did not get that. I got like 4, 5, 6 hours of sleep regularly in undergrad. It's not good. It's not normal. This, to me, is also very interesting. Leisure. Is that necessary for living a well-rounded life? Is that necessary for learning? Does it matter how much sleep we get? Does it matter how much we travel, how much time we have grooming? Do we think there's a relationship between the amount of time and effort we put into education and the actual outcomes? Right? I'm seeing nods and yeses, and I think this matters. The data's here. We have to do a little bit of work getting it, right? Extracting it. And so I know data is not the most fun thing, and we have a lot more slides here, right? With a lot of data. And so, like in the last 5 minutes, I guess I have an open question for you. In the past, like this has been a very expressive. Everybody's like bringing in their own ideas. We have some of that for these data analyses. And so the sort of like question that I have is, do we just not see the relevance of this in our lives, or are we having trouble extracting data, or is this not something that you're used to doing in class? Like, I want this to be productive and useful. And I don't want to just tell you what the takeaways from this are. Like, this is your life.
Yeah, I just don't feel like I can really speak on that because my pie chart was extremely different. So I don't
Okay, that's fine.
have much to say.
Is that how most people feel, that they're not represented in the aggregate? And because you don't see your pie chart, you don't want to make conclusions about the general population? Or, yeah.
Well, personally, like, I work 8 hours a day, 5 days a week.
Right.
While being like a full-time student, so I feel like I'm not as represented in this pie chart because like working for me is like 27% of the
Mm-hmm.
chart, while like my education is like 24.3, which is like very far off. In
Mm-hmm.
this. But also I spend time like multitasking with like doing homework at work. So
Right.
I don't know.
Right. I think that's great. I mean, I'm sorry that you have to do that. I'm very sorry. That's difficult. I know exactly what that's like. But those are the exact points we're looking for, right? This is the data. This is how my data compares. What does that say about us? Right? How many people feel that their data looks like this 2025? Just raise of hands. A little higher, please. Okay, so a third of the class. I guess the takeaway, we've got like 2 minutes here, is the data's here. Whether we are different or not, there's a lot to say about it. We want to look at the trends. We want to see how these things are evolving. And then through these personal experiences, if this is what your data looks like and somebody's telling you, hey, my education's way out the roof, my work is way high, it is to the detriment of these other categories, we can get that other data, we can compare, and we can hopefully draw meaningful conclusions. We're going to start off next class. This is like really important stuff. We're going to just go through these slides for the first 15 minutes of the next class. I hope that this has been somewhat instructive. If there are issues reading the graphs, if there are issues, or the charts, if there are issues feeling comfortable speaking about general populations or trying to do these sorts of analyses, or if it just isn't making sense, I would appreciate if you'd let me know. I want this class and this data to be useful to you. So I'm sorry if I haven't presented it in a way that was super engaging today. But I will be looking forward to some of the feedback to hopefully make the start of next class a little bit better. This is a skill you're going to hopefully have for the rest of your life. And I think it's important for us to really dive deep into that. So next week will be asynchronous. You can be here in class if you want. I will be here. Otherwise, I will post it. If I don't see you Thursday, I'll see you Tuesday. All right. Thanks, everybody.